What's up, everybody? This is Jared, just here to remind you that if you like this podcast, be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a rating or review. We appreciate you all and hope you enjoy the episode. Gang, gang, gang.
Hello, welcome back to Done with Adulting Podcast.
How we doing?
We are doing. We are getting through each day, one day at a time. Today was a rough day.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for. Just get through one day at a time.
It's been a long day. It's also been a long week for me. So yeah, we're here. We're here. That's good enough for me.
That's all that matters. You made it. Yo, I'm not gonna lie. I was in bed. I think we woke up. Emily and I woke up. It was Tuesday, and she goes, "Wait, is it only Tuesday?" And and then she said that, and like the week just went so slow for me. And then it was like Wednesday. I thought it was Thursday. Thursday, I thought it was Friday. But
really, the week went fast for me in the beginning, and it was weird because I was like, "This week is suspiciously going by kind of fast. Is it Wednesday tomorrow already?" And as soon as I said that out loud,
it was so slow.
Everything just went from coasting to plummeting. But, like I said, we're here, and that's good enough for me today because it's so funny about what we're talking about today because I think that Mercury is in retrograde, and I think that's why everything is going haywire for me.
Yeah, I feel like people say that every single week or like every single month. They're like, Mercury's in retrograde. And I'm like, what? Didn't that just happen like a week ago or a month ago? Is it back in retrograde now?
Other planets can go into retrograde.
I know that, but I just don't understand. I understand what it means, but yeah, people always make it seem like it has a like personal effect on them, and I don't know. I think that might be a mental thing, but we're going to learn today, and we're going to find out if that's actually true or not. So I'm excited.
Because I'm also excited, and it is a thing, Jared. Like you said, we're going to learn about it today. I'm pretty sure it's in retrograde, but actually I'm not 100% sure. But when I talked to our guest Ashley last week on our class, and I remember in class I was having all those issues, and she messaged me in class and was like, it's retrograde. And I was like, I knew something was up, but I don't know enough about it, which is why we wanted to invite Ashley on the podcast today. We should give some background about how we know her too. We haven't even talked about this.
Really. Well, I mean, we touched on it here and there, but basically, I think it was the motivation episode. You talked about how we kind of invested into the pod or invested into ourselves and started this accelerator program with another podcast that's huge from California. I don't know if we want to drop their names yet or now.
Drop them.
So they're called Almost 30. I guess I've heard of them before. I never listened to them before the program. Yeah, but I feel like they have a huge following and people actually do know them. And it seems like they're kind of similar. Or they talk about similar things to what we talk about.
Yeah, we're
almost 30 ourselves. So
it's true. And they have, they're top 50 podcasts in the globe, I'm pretty sure. And we did a course with them. It was literally so good. I'm
6
really
weeks.
Happy we made that decision. And it's over now, which is really sad.
That was the fastest 6 weeks of my life.
I know, it's kind of crazy, but we learned so much in that course, and
we made great connections.
Yeah, we're hoping to bring what we learned obviously back to your ears, but also the best thing, which Jared mentioned, was the connections that we made.
Yeah, there was, I think, 24 other podcasts in the program.
Yeah, and they were all so different.
Yeah, it was really dope. It was really dope to see and just interact with people and learn their stories, see their goals. Yeah, hear how they're trying to reach those goals, and we're all like beginning podcasters, so yeah, it's crazy to see how everybody handles things differently, and you can learn from that.
So we will just not hold you guys hostage any longer. But today we are going to be talking about something really exciting, and We have a really special guest coming on. We are welcoming Ashley Sondergaard, who is a yoga teacher, an entrepreneur, and the host of Yoga Magic podcast. You guys go check that podcast out, which we'll talk about more. For 8 years, she's studied yoga, meditation, astrology, and mindfulness practices to prioritize self-care and self-discovery. After having her 2 little girls, who we can see in the background of this video, they're so cute. Ashley discovered the hard way that taking care of yourself first is the only way to take care of others. Today, she supports her students and clients in leveling up their everyday routines into magical self-care rituals. I'm so excited. We're so happy to have you here, Ashley. How are you?
I'm so excited. Thanks for having me too. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to hear what you have to say and learn some more, because I have zero idea about astrology and the zodiac signs, and I don't even know if I honestly believe it all. But
I was gonna say, are you a skeptic? Are you an astrology skeptic? I think our listeners might be too. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when people say, "Oh, I can never gel with this type of sign," or I don't know if I actually believe that. So
you're doing it right then, Jared. You're doing it right, because that's the whole point, is that you got to take it all with a grain of salt, and you get to choose your life's path. But it can be sort of fun to find out a little bit more about, where you come from and why you make decisions the way you are. But I'm kind of a skeptic too. I'm like a believer, but also a skeptic.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel like you have to be, especially in 2020.
Right?
I know. And I feel like in 2022, it was like, we always hear stuff like what Jared and I were just talking about, things being in retrograde. And I feel like astrology I don't want to know if I want to call it an industry. It's probably like a science, right? Astrology as a science, I feel like is getting more love than I noticed in the past. Thanks. I think it's becoming more mainstream, for lack of a better way to describe it.
I agree.
I see more people.
Totally.
So, but before we hop in, do you want to just tell us how you got into this, and I guess where you started in your journey,
and just more about yourself as a person?
Yeah, I'm so honored that you guys asked me. So, I will admit that I am not an astrology expert by any means. I'm definitely an enthusiast, and I use it in a lot of really practical ways. But what I find to be really interesting is that it's really validating. Astrology is one of those things that the more you know, it's, oh, that's who I am. So I'm a yoga teacher. I'm an astrologer enthusiast, and I am somebody who, again, loves to learn. I have this podcast called Yoga Magic, in which I get to learn about amazing, woo-woo practices, if you will. Some of them are really practical. We talk a lot about self-care. We talk a lot about self-discovery. And so it's really only been the last year or so that I've been really, really diving into astrology. And I use it with my clients. I have self-care clients where we build really meaningful self-care plans together.
Aww, that's cool.
It's really fun. And we use self-care as that connection point, so that we can look further into people's charts, their motivations, who they are, their essence. And it's been such a fun ride. I'm really enjoying it.
Oh my gosh. So I don't even know where to start. We have so many.
Well, the first question is, what does it mean for Mercury to be in retrograde? And
what
does retrograde even mean?
Okay.
That's the most common thing that we hear.
We can blame a lot of things on Mercury retrograde. It's funny, Asia, when you were having some tech difficulties last week, that stuff happens all the time. And actually, Mercury wasn't in retrograde anymore. It was then what we call the shadow. So there's a period of time where it's kind of coming out of that. Uh-huh. So basically, when in doubt, you can blame it on Mercury retrograde.
So it's like residual effects.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
It's just so funny.
I can't get a break.
So how often does Mercury go into retrograde? Because I feel like I hear people say it every other week or every other month, or I hear it so frequently. So I'm assuming when they say it, it's actually not in retrograde.
Well, it probably actually is. It's in retrograde. So let me just give you a little backup.
Yeah,
retrograde. What the heck does that mean? I don't. Okay, it means.
Also, I'm sorry. Should we actually know this? Was
no, I didn't really know it until the last few years, when I Googled it.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna have a lot of ignorant. Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of ignorant questions. So I apologize in advance.
I think this is so much more fun to talk to people that are totally blank slate about this stuff, because again, we're all just like figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
So Mercury retrograde, a retrograde planet is when something appears to be moving backwards. Mercury is the planet that's most frequently going retrograde within the skies for us. So it's like 3 to 4 times a year. And so it does happen a lot. And you're probably right that like you might hear or you might notice that like things are going a little haywire, and you can blame it on Mercury retrograde, because it is actually. And so Mercury is the planet that rules communication and it rules technology. So Asia, when you were having those issues,
it was in retrograde, wasn't it? Or
it was just out of retrograde. So it was just in the shadow. See, Jared, look at you. And we can learn a lot about planets and different just like kind of chaos in our world when certain planets are retrograde. So more recently, Mars was in retrograde, and Mars is the planet that rules motivation and fire and sex. And so sometimes people feel like this intense fiery energy, and Mars does not go retrograde as frequently. So that one felt like a lot.
When was that?
Yeah, I was to say, when was that?
It just ended like a week or two ago. It was, and it's a longer period of time. Sense. Did you guys were you like, I don't know, there's so much, this year has been a wild cosmic ride, such a wild ride. So I could blame a number of things on the skies, but that was one that I felt a lot.
Okay. Hold on, Jared. First of all, I told you other planets could go into retrograde, so I'm proud that I was right about that. Ding, 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 one for me. And the second thing is, I feel like we need to just like, I know you had that burning question about Mercury, and now I feel like we're in deep. Like, I feel like I need to start
step back,
on the outside, which
we have to walk it back a little bit.
We got to walk it back.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Which is like, for me, you know, as it relates to just like astrology in general, I feel like the main thing we see on our social media or whatever, besides Mercury in retrograde, is horoscopes and like what your sign is, what your sign, like you see like memes. I post them all the time from CoStar because I'm obsessed with the CoStar app. It's the only thing I know about astrology, but I feel like it knows me better than I know myself, which is why I believe in astrology, even though I don't know anything about it, which is kind of dumb when I say it out loud. But what I'm saying is, I feel like that is like, can we just start there with like, not obviously going in depth about all the different signs, but sort of how our sign, or like when we're born, how can it really actually, how does it affect us? Or like, is it in our DNA? Like, I don't get how it's connected, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's such a good question, Asia, because it's like, is it in our DNA or what? You know, and there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of different interpretations. So when you're looking at your CoStar app, you're looking at your birth chart, essentially. What was happening in the sky when you were born? And there's so much. You know, I had posted Kamala's birth chart on my Instagram because I'm oh my gosh, like what's in there? It's just so amazing. But I don't even know how to interpret most of that. The big elements to look at in a chart and to understand kind of the essence of who you are and how, you know, what was happening in the skies and how that affects you is to look at 3 things. The first is your sun sign. And that's the most common sign that people, you know, attribute like a horoscope. Like if you're going to look up in a magazine, you're going to look up your sun sign. So what are your sun signs? Do you guys know?
I have no idea. I mean,
Jared's a Gemini.
Are you, Jared? Are you a Gemini?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm born in June. So yeah, I guess so.
Well, it's not.
Sun sign?
Yeah.
When's your birthday?
June 11th.
June 11th. Yeah.
Okay. I'm June 21st, and I'm a Cancer. So we're kind of close. But Gemini's like, oh, you're versatile. You go with the flow.
I hear all the negatives about it. I hear that we're two-faced, we're stubborn. People might agree with the stubborn part.
You are stubborn.
Oh my God.
You're not as stubborn as Taurus though, so you're fine. But no,
okay.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I really only hear the negative sides of it. I don't hear, I guess, I've never really heard versatile and all that.
You feel good about that?
The actual sign.
I'm Aquarius, but I'm the last day. I'm the 18th of February, so I'm on the cusp. People always tell me that. You have a mix
of both?
Yeah, people always tell me that means something, and I think my I actually think my moon or not rising. Oh gosh. See, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do have a Pisces part of like my big three.
Ooh.
So I should probably look at my app and see, but I do identify with Aquarius like in a lot of ways. And then some days I totally identify with Pisces. So it's weird. I almost feel like a nomad because I never know like which I should, if I'm gonna rely on, like not rely, but if I'm gonna interpret or consider horoscope, like which one to go with.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of people have theories on cusps, whether or not to believe in them or not. And my theory is always just go with what you feel like in the moment. Like Aquarius is science and it's data and intelligence, and you might feel like that one day and then the next you might not, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's super normal. You're like, I don't think so.
I need to understand.
So you said the big three, or Asia? Yeah, Asia said the big three. So your first one, you said the moon or the
first
sun?
Is the sun. So the first is your sun sign, which we all just, Asia's an Aquarius, you're a Gemini. So the next, well, let me just back up. As far as the sun goes, the sun is really like your essence. It's when you're shining the brightest, when you're doing the things that really fill you up. I like to think of kids as like true embodiments of the sun sign because they haven't been conditioned to move out of that, right? Like my daughter is an Aquarius as well, Asia, and she is like, she doesn't give an F what people think about her, and she's 2. And I'm like, can I just embody some of that too? Yeah. So that's the sun. The moon is what's happening in the subconscious, what's happening in the background. And you know, a fun way to dive into your moon sign is to look at your dreams. Like, what are your dreams? What's happening in there? Maybe you don't dream at all. Maybe you don't remember your dreams. Well, everybody dreams, so maybe you don't remember them. You know, when you are meditating and you're in like a really deep state of meditation, like what comes up? That can be a really telling place. The subconscious, again, it's super reactionary. You're not necessarily like thinking through this part of yourself. Subconscious will come out without any thinking. And then the third of the big three is your rising sign. And rising is how people interpret you. It's your mask. It's what, you know, over time you really learn to embrace. And, you know, when you put those all together, you see a much more full picture of someone and their chart. And when you look at an entire birth chart, there's like a gazillion other things to look at. But in your CoStar app, Asia, that's probably what you're looking at the most. Yeah, those sun, moon, rising.
Jared, do you know what time you were born in the day?
I have no idea.
Okay, I was going to tell you to look yours up.
So what is that? Does that play a factor into anything?
It does. Yes. That determines your rising. So you do need, if you want to get any of this information, you want to pull your chart, you want to have an astrologer, a professional astrologer pull your chart, you do need to know your exact birth time, the date, the location, and I think that's it. Yeah.
I think it was early morning, but that's not exact. So
you can get it from your birth certificate. Like people, you have to do a little digging. And there are some ways kind of like to generalize if you can't get your birth certificate, because I know that is like an issue. But it helps to have the exact time.
Just ask your mom, Jared. She'll tell you.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do. Okay, so correction. My sun is actually in Pisces. My moon is in Aquarius, and then my rising is in Leo. So I was saying that I feel like an Aquarius on the inside sometimes a lot, because I consider myself to be an introvert, which people literally laugh out loud when I say that, because you would never think that about me. I'm like never not talking. And, but like sometimes I'm literally just like, I mean, the only person who would know this is probably my husband, but I'm like, please don't speak. Like, I just want to sit in a room by myself in the dark and just sit there. And like, I'm fine. Like, I love that. And I could sit there for a while. Like, I really love like being alone and like not talking to anyone and doing like those types of internal Aquarius things.
And that's probably your Pisces too, Asia. Like Pisces is the most empathic of all of the signs, feels things. You know, a Pisces is going to need to take a break from the world because there's just energy being thrown at you and you feel it. Does that Does that make sense for you?
No, I don't really feel things. I do empathize with people, but I intentionally do that because historically I have not empathized well with others. So now I'm trying to be intentional about it. But I do my schooling is in social work, so there is a part of me that like
totally
empathizes, but I'm not like, when I'm in that mode, it's not because I'm taking a break from like feeling everybody's feelings. It's more like I just don't want to talk to anybody, like in general, like I don't want to speak. Do you know what I mean? And I've heard that's an Aquarius thing.
I feel like you're an outgoing introvert, because when you are put in those situations, like you're able to actually.
Well, that's probably my Leo because I'm a that's my mask.
Yeah, that's 100%. Leo is like Leo's the only sign that's ruled by the sun, the biggest and the boldest of all of the signs. And like movie stars are often Leos because you're just like, they're magnetic, they're fiery, they're energizing. And like, I actually was thinking through, I was like, if I could guess, I'm not that good at guessing again. I'm just like a lover of all this stuff, but like was trying to guess what the two of you would be. And I usually will guess rising because that's what people show. And Leo makes total sense.
Yeah.
So do you think any of those tendencies, at least for, I guess, famous people or actors, are learned or they can be learned?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think a lot of it is, conditioning. A lot of it is so there's another side of the chart called the south and the north node, and you enter the world in your south node and you move out of the world in your north node. And so over time you might be moving from these two polarities, right? Like moving from I entered the world as a Gemini and I'm exiting as a Leo or whatever it is. So yes to all of it. And
I like how you put that.
The thing that like my astrologer, who gives me all of the information and has really taught me a lot, says that we're all the signs. We are all the signs 100%. And we have free will. We get to choose what we do with this information. And like, yes, you may find out that, oh, like I'm a Scorpio. That means that I have, some shadow and some dark energy that I want to work through or whatever, like whatever negative connotations people want to add to a Scorpio. But in fact, you can say, but actually, I'm all about transformation and transmuting darkness into light. You can choose which path you go down.
Yeah, I guess it kind of sounds like it also depends on your experiences in life, like what you've been through and how you were able to adapt, or I guess how you handled a certain situation. That's what it kind of sounds like.
Yeah, I agree. So I was going to ask you that, like, can you talk more about how our signs like might affect those types of things in terms of making decisions about anything in life, adulting, like your partner, your whatever. And, like those types of things, like does space have an effect on like how we adult or like what we're doing on our, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it does. I 100% think that it does. So one of the planets I really like to look to outside of the big three, I love to look at South and North Node when I'm working with clients, but I love to look at Mars. Again, Mars is the planet of motivation. And we were talking about how Mars was in retrograde and that like, that's kind of fiery energy and it shows up different for people. But in general, Mars is what like gets you going. And so if your Mars is in Gemini, for example, you're probably really, motivated by a lot of different things. You feel things in a lot of different ways. There's so many different ways to be motivated, and to be able to look into one specific part of your chart to be like, okay, I'm gonna study what this means for me. What sign is in that planet when I was born, and how can I use that to get going in the morning, or to embrace the fact that I'm maybe not always super motivated. If you have Pisces in Mars, you might feel like you just need to experience those feelings first and then move forward. It can be so helpful and validating, really validating, be like, oh, this is just who I am.
Wow. I never thought about it that way in terms of just like, there are obviously days where we wake up and we're like, ugh, or like, you just feel off, or like you feel really good for some reason that you can't identify, or, things like that. And I've never really thought that could be potentially planets
it could
like
be
doing that.
Totally. And as far as like the birth chart, right? So the birth chart's what's happening when you were born.
Mm-hmm.
But as the sky continues to change right now, like it is, it affects us all differently based on how our chart is, you know, what it looked like when we were born. And so Mars retrograde might have hit an Aries really hard because Mars rules Aries. So like there's just different things that are happening for different people. And that's why getting it, you know, a reading, getting at your chart read, one, looking into your birth chart and the details, but then two, looking at, okay, here, this is what's coming, you know, this eclipse, you know, this full moon, whatever it is, and this is going to affect you a lot more, or this is going to affect your partner a lot more. I like to get a reading for myself like every 6 months, just to kind of like lay of the land. Does it all come to fruition? No, not really. But sometimes it's like, that was so scarily spot on.
Yeah.
I like put it in my calendar. That helps me to know what's coming. Just little notes.
So I guess to the relationship aspect of it, when you hear people say, "Oh, I can never be with this sign because I'm this sign," do you think that's true, or how do you feel about that? And how do you think the signs affect, I guess, romantic relationships and then platonic relationships?
Yeah. You can look at your Venus to see a little bit about how you move through romantic relationships.
So does each planet do like each planet you can look at for different areas of life?
You can. Yeah. There's some like, you know, each planet will have a little navigation for you.
Got it. Okay.
And
so Venus
like,
is the relationship one.
That's going to be like your romantic relationships. To your question, Jared, you know, there are some signs that, like, if you're going to look at two sun signs together, for example, my husband and I'm a Cancer, he's a Capricorn. They are polar opposites.
Like oil and water?
And for some people, like, that's not super compatible. That's literally two different polarities, but it can also be the most perfect balance, right? So there are parts of your chart that are going to be super compatible, and there's parts of your chart that are not going to be. One of the things that is really just fun to look at, you know, is that those sun, moon, rising, line them up together with if it's a romantic partner and see what happens. You can get charts, or I think they're called synergistic charts, where you can like line up your whole charts and just see, you know, where there's some prickly areas. Maybe it's in communication, maybe it's in intimacy, you know, and what it does, I think, is just helps know where there's area of opportunity. And that's the same of platonic relationships too. Like you can, you know, in CoStar, I don't know if you do this, but like you can add your friends and you can see.
I do.
And that's so fun to be like, oh yes, you know, my best friend is
on the same
having
page
some issues with communication, and like,
or
she
sometimes
can't tell me how she feels.
Sometimes it'll be like, you're like, I have my cousin Leah in there, and it'll be like, check in with Leah. She has this same thing today, or like she's feeling the same feelings today or something based on her.
100, yeah.
Jared, you should get CoStar so I can see what's up with you.
I might look into it.
Because Jared's very hard to read. I will say, like, I don't know if it's a Gemini thing or
That's
not.
how I like it. That's how I like it.
I don't know if it's a Gemini thing or not, or if it's his like the mask, the rising sign, but
it might be a Jersey thing.
Jared is like a brick wall, and it's only until you're like, I don't know, now we've been friends for 10 years. I would hope he has opened up a little bit, but I like would just be so interested to see what all your stuff is, Jared. You have to get CoStar.
I'm down. I'm gonna do it. That could be another episode. We can just talk about.
Let's dive into your CoStar. Yeah. There's a couple other apps that are good too. CoStar is a good one. I think CoStar can be a little bit negative at times. You know, you were talking, Jared, like the negative side, or like the people will stereotype certain signs certain ways, and there is truth to, you know, the positive and the negative. But I also like Sanctuary. If you guys want to look up another good app, that's a fun one as well. And you get like daily, it'll send you like little daily notifications, and they're so scary spot on. I'm just like, stop looking at me.
Yeah, CoStar sends me notifications too, and that's so interesting. You say that they're negative, because I don't think that they're negative. I do notice that it's a little negative, but I notice that it's also like it's not just negative. It's just like not very like peppy. Like CoStar will literally be like, figure it out now, or like it'll send me like messages like that to my phone, and I'll be like, geez, back off, CoStar, like I just got my day started. And so it's so funny that you said that, because I've been noticing that, but I was like, am I just being soft? Like I'm just letting this app hurt my feelings.
The other really fun thing, talking relationships, Jared, is to look, if your listeners have kids, to look at their charts. And this is kind of why I got into it, or got into just, using it in my everyday life, because my kids are so different. They're so different. And I don't know always how to parent them appropriately. And so it's when I started getting regular readings and looked at their chart and how I impact them and how we communicate and how they're motivated and how I'm motivated, it just made things a little easier on all of us.
That's so cute. What are their little charts? And do they just like embody their signs every day? Like every day, are you like, whoa?
They kind of do, actually. Like it's scary. So my youngest is an Aries. Rather, my youngest is an Aquarius. My oldest is an Aries. So an Aquarius, again, is that like really like data-driven, intellectual, okay, being the wallflower. Whereas an Aries is the first sign, the sign of the self, the sign that like is, hello, everybody, I'm here. So having these two like very different little girls with a mom who's a Cancer, who's an emotional mama bear, like literally my whole existence is like to nurture, and I want to do it for both. So the only person in our household who's kind of like WTF is my husband. He's like, he embraces it, but he's also like, can we not talk about what's in retrograde today? Like that would be really nice.
He's over it.
He's, though he's gotten some readings, and like he knows he's
coming around.
Very spot on. Yeah. He's a Capricorns they tend to be a little cold. It's not his fault.
So this is going to be a very dumb question, but when you say readings, is it like a tarot card reading, or like what type of readings are there? And is that astrology? Is that similar to, I guess, tarot cards and psychics and things like that?
That's a really good question at all. That's a great question.
So when I say a reading, you would have a professional astrologer would get your birth information. They would probably put it into a computer system that they have, and they would pull up your chart. And the chart, it looks like a big circle, and it has all these lines of things. So they're interpreting that birth chart. So a reading could be looking at your birth chart. It could be also bumping your birth chart up against what's happening in the world. How that's different from, say, like a tarot card reading is, tarot is an actual deck. And while it may draw on some of the same themes, it's a very intuition-led practice. The cards themselves are the mirror. And so like if cards are the mirror, in astrology, your chart is the mirror. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm always scared to, like, I see the movies when people go get tarot card readings and it's like death. And I'm like scared to death to do that. So I don't know.
It's such a good point. The death card, Jared, is very scary. If you've ever seen the death card, it's like I
hope to never.
A skull. Well, here's the funny thing about all of this is like, it's like a skull or a skeleton, like on a horse. But the death card is actually a really good card to pull, because it means it's the end to something. Like all of your hard labor and the work that you've been doing is now done, and you can move forward. So it's actually a really like freeing card to pull. And it's so easy to be afraid of these things. I don't know if you guys grew up in a faith background, but I grew up Catholic. And so this is just like so out of my worldview. And now I understand like, oh, it's kind of all the same. Like we're all in this together.
Well, no, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I grew up, my grandmother was, on my mom's side, it was Catholic, but my dad's side was Christian. And so I grew up kind of like in a mix of both. But now in my adult life, and we've talked about a little bit about this on another episode, is like, as you're aging and becoming an adult, obviously you're rethinking or just like re-understanding yourself and like how you are connected to religion or spirituality. And you start to see or think to yourself, like, I don't necessarily identify with Catholicism and I don't identify as Catholic, but like if my grandmother was alive, it would be like, don't say that out loud, or like you're dead.
World War
Do you know what I
III.
mean? So, and now that we're adults, it's like kind of freeing in a way to start to really explore other religions or other practices or spiritualities. But it's also sometimes I feel like not confusing, but like conflicting internally, because you're like, okay, like I can believe in this, like I can believe in this religion or this God or this whoever, but can I also believe in astrology, or can I also believe in crystals or that type of science and believe in, you know, whatever God or Jesus you believe in? Do you know what I mean? So I feel like even me as a person, as I like am getting older, and I'm getting more interested in this type of science and studies, in terms of just like now I'm like following all these people who use crystals, and like I just feel like I don't know who I am anymore. But my point is, like, can I do all this? Like sometimes I'm like, are you kidding? Like, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, what do I go by? Like, am I going by this horoscope, or am I gonna like say my nightly prayers and like move on? Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
I don't know if I explained that well. Sorry.
No, I
It's
think,
like,
but you're not alone. I think a
yeah.
lot of us are exploring this, and maybe that's like kind of part of the whole adulting process, is to start identifying what we believe and what we don't. And like, even, you know, like politics over time has started to come into this, as well as like, again, growing up in the middle of Minnesota, Catholic upbringing, and now who I am today is so different. And if I would have, my grandparents were still alive and listening to my podcast, I think they'd be like, what? What's happening? I'd probably be in a lot of trouble. Actually, really funny story. One of my aunts and uncles are like, we're all Italian, so we're just like loud. We love a lot of wine. It's just like a lot of emotions. Anyways, so my uncle was listening to a show, one of my episodes, and it was about pleasure and like the willingness to explore our pleasures in life. And I was like so embarrassed. Like that's the one that he chose to listen to. Time, it was so freeing to be like, guess what? I'm an adult now, and I get to decide what I believe and, you know, what I want to do in my life.
Preach.
And then obviously whatever you're going to teach your kids, like I think about that all the time. It's like,
how it's going to be different than how you were taught or
yeah,
raised.
and like I love how, Ashley, you're talking about you know, having your children's charts read and incorporating that into your parenting. It's like, I don't know. I mean, neither Jared and I have kids, and we always talk to people with kids, and we're like, keep it up. We don't know how you're doing it, but you're doing a good job. Because I don't know, like thinking about having to shape a human into like a person.
Keep them safe.
And then like, what are you, like whatever I am doing, they're going to believe in. So like, are your girls gonna, you know, obviously they're going to become adults and pick and choose, but as kids, you know, like they're going to remember like Mom's yoga magic podcast. Like we do this, we do that. And like, I just think it's cool. It's a cool like phase of life that we're all sort of transitioning into.
Yeah.
Adulting.
And the thing I always tell myself is like, I'm going to F them up no matter what. I mean, like it's inevitable. I had a friend recently, like, how can we like work really hard to not screw them up? And I'm like, I just don't think it's possible. I think that's like the point of parenting, is like to keep them safe, and also to like probably give them some baggage, but that's just my opinion.
So you were speaking about your podcast, and I guess you're a yoga instructor. Does yoga and meditation, does that play into astrology and the signs at all? Or how do you kind of intermingle all of those?
Yeah. So I really like to bring them together. And that's kind of why I've been so excited about astrology, is because it's woven really well into the practice of yoga for me, into meditation, and helping my students just have a little direction. And, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can take it. I love to theme on, in my yoga classes, on what's happening in the stars. So there's eclipse season is coming up here in December, and eclipses they're kind of like bookends. So they're the beginnings and they're the endings of things. And it gives me some tools to help my students do some self-study. You know, when you look back at the last eclipse season, what was happening in your life? That was around June. So for a lot of us, it was like, we were kind of navigating this whole new world of leaving our houses again, but only for a little bit. And now here we are again, we're back into like a high surge of COVID cases. And it's so wild to look and do a little self-study work with those, these bookends. Mm-hmm. So that's one example of how I like to bring it into classes and themings. As far as meditation goes, mm-hmm. I love to look, we were talking about the moon sign. I love to look at your moon and where, what sign it's in, because it can give you some direction in your meditation practice. If that's something you like to do, if you like to meditate, it mm-hmm. can give you some direction in like what you're seeking out in this work that you're doing, whether it be yoga, whether it be meditation, breath work, any of those practices. And, it's all kind of, again, like this is all very interconnected, and whether or not someone wants to latch on it in my class is totally up to them. Mm-hmm. But it just can be a fun focus for something that often feels like very big.
Yeah. What do you think is, okay, so I have two separate questions. I'll just ask the first one first. We're coming up on the holiday season. And the holidays can be a lot of things for a lot of different people, happy, sad, all the things in between, feelings. We're probably going to be in lockdown. Who knows? So how do you think sort of whatever is coming up, or whatever, you mentioned something coming up in December, my real question is, how do you think that that's going to play a role in sort of like how our body and minds are feeling throughout the holidays, but also like a bigger role on the world? I feel like there has to be a connection between like major things happening, like you were talking about the pandemic maybe, and whatever's going on in the sky.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of wild that the holidays is when, okay, it's the end of this crazy year. The holidays are going to be really disjointed. I mean, they may be disjointed. They may be really challenging. And holidays are already hard for a lot of people. And so I think adding this whole other layer is mm-hmm. challenging. But the good news is looking at the stars, if you look back, and I won't get technical, mostly because I don't really know the technicalities, but even if astrologers talk about this year and how intense it was mm-hmm. from an astrological standpoint, it was a mess. There was some things that haven't happened in hundreds and hundreds of years that happened. And we saw it play out in a lot of different ways. And what's really funny is that as we come into the end of the year, there's more, but it's almost like it needed to get worse before it got better. So in my humble opinion, I think December will be a little bit easier. The eclipse that's coming is the full solar eclipse on December 14th. It's about communication. Yeah,
can we see that
down, everybody?
Can we see that?
We can't. It's gonna. Other parts of the world can see it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, certain times people can see it, but we can't. Unfortunately, the U.S. can't. But it'll be a time of just a little bit, I want to say release. That's to me, that's how I look at it. It's just a little bit of release. 2021, I don't know. I haven't done that much study.
We're not even talking about it. We're just let's just make it there and see. I would like to point out that I love how positive you are. I'm always, all of our questions are what's going to happen next? Are we going to die? And you're on the bright side. I appreciate it.
Honestly, I don't know that it could have gotten much worse astrologically. It was really rough. It was a rough year.
What was the thing? I'm sorry. What was the thing that happened with Trump when he was staring at, was it the sun? He was staring at the sun and they were don't look at that, but he looked at it anyway. And I don't know. You know what I'm talking
about? I don't know what you're talking about, but I was the other day I was watching what's his face melting, Rudy Giuliani melting. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he had something come out of his ear.
What was that?
Trump staring at the sun and Rudy Giuliani melting on live television. I don't know.
Where are we?
What world do we live in? But I'm
it was a solar eclipse. They told him not to look at the sun without glasses, and then there's pictures of him just staring at the sun. I forgot. That was a year or two ago. I'm sorry. That was just so random.
That was
actually that full solar eclipse. I think I know what I was in Denver, and it was very vivid where we were, and Yeah, and people were like looking at him, and you can actually damage your eyes if you
Yeah,
look
the
at
sun
them.
is not safe. Oh my God.
Something not to play with. So
No.
speaking of the sun, I think I've always heard that the moon has a certain gravitational pull on the ocean. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah,
And if that
totally.
is
That's what
true,
causes waves.
oh well, yeah. I mean, does that have an
And the
effect on
tide, I
certain?
should say.
Does that have an effect on certain people and I guess their personalities or their signs?
I
Yeah.
think the moon in general does, I assume.
Well, so the moon, again, like not waves, but tides, it affects the tides. And if we think that our bodies are mostly made up of water, I mean, to me, it's like, how could the moon not affect us as it's moving through its own cycles? And so
I never thought about it that way.
isn't that wild? Like I've never
Yeah.
actually, we have cycles within our own bodies. And I speak to women a lot, like our cycles weirdly are about the same long length of time as the moon cycles. There's just a lot of synchronicities there. But to your question, Jared, what can be really fun is to look up when you get your chart read and you see where the moon was, like what cycle it was in when you were born. So I was born on a full moon, which is why I have a Cancer sun and a Capricorn moon. They are the polar opposite on the wheel. And so when you have a sun and moon that are opposite, you're born on a full moon. So during the full moon, I tend to be a little bit more charged, and I notice things differently. And so if you like look up, oh, I was born on a new moon, or I was born at this phase, it can be a fun time to take your practices, whether they be meditation or journaling or, subconscious work, and really dial them in at that time for you. Everyone is affected differently. This last full moon around Halloween was the second full moon of the month. It's just called the blue moon. And there's also like 1 million planets in retrograde. It was like a lot. Like I felt physically ill the next day. I could have been hungover too, but I kept saying that it was the moon. I'm not sure. I think it wasn't
COVID. It wasn't COVID.
I have not. I just got a test the other day. I'm pretty negative, but who knows these days, right?
That's wild. That's wild to me.
So what do you feel like is the biggest misunderstanding about astrology? Or like, I mean, maybe we've asked a couple dumb questions today, so we might have.
That was
going
to be my next question too. That was going to be my next question too. So,
like, what's the biggest misconception about it, or like whatever? People hate on everything. Everybody wants to hate on everything or whatever. Like, I'm into this. I'm excited about it, and I hear people be like, "Oh, that stuff is like meh." Doesn't.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When she brought this topic to me, I'm like, why did what? Like, what are we gonna talk about? But this has been.
How much did you learn today?
This has been great so far. So
I'm like very
so
honored, Jared, that you are coming around on this. Well, and I'm probably if you were to have like a super, super seasoned astrologer on here, it might be another story. But
yeah,
your question is a good one, Asia, because I think that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on things that are becoming more mainstream, tarot cards, astrology, all these things that the world that I live in is very commonplace now. But like, again, to most others, they're just like, what are you on? So I think the reminder is that it's really, there's no one predicting the future. I mean, maybe there are some psychics that can do that, but astrology is not going to give you the exact layout of your life. What it will do is give you, some direction, some signs, some ideas about where you can go and what you can look for. So I think the misconception that like an astrologer is going to tell you your future is not a reality. And the other piece of it is that, again, we get free will. And if we take some time to just sort of embrace the process of astrology, whether it be get your chart read, even if it's just placebo, like truly, if the whole process of it makes you feel better, then it's doing its job. I was actually listening to a podcast not long ago that like wanted to debunk astrology, and they theoretically sort of like debunked it. But at the end they were like, but again, if it makes you feel better and it makes you validated in who you are, then heck yes, just do it.
And enjoy it. Yeah.
Wow.
So if somebody wanted to get into astrology and into the signs, like somebody like myself who has no idea anything about it, what are some, I guess, ways they can start doing that? Is it apps, or do they need to go see people? or just Googling on websites?
Yes. So there's so many different ways. Depends on what, how much you want to invest in something like this. Apps are an amazing place to start because you can get your sun, moon, rising. You can get just the three bags. You can see what, where those big indications of who you are play out in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also kind of tell you what's coming, and you start to understand the language a little bit more about what planets to pay attention to, what signs, like where are the synchronicities, all the things. And then I think getting your chart read by a professional is so amazing. And it can be, you can do it in 30 minutes. You can have an hour and a half chart read. You can do them on Zoom. You can do them in person. The astrologer that I really love to work with, her name is Meredith McGowan. She's a friend of mine. We work together a lot. And she works in past lives, so she can look into your chart and see like past lives. I know. I'm also like, wait, what? Like, it's just looking at me like, what?
Can you tell me more about that? Because I feel like so the reason I interrupted you is because you mentioned also dreams earlier and how you can sometimes see your signs within your dreams. And I also think and believe, Jared's going to really think I'm going into woo land, but I also think and believe like dreams is obviously like soul travel. Like when we're sleeping, our soul travels through time, and that's like part of what our dreams are. And my dreams are really fucking vivid and really sometimes wild. And I always remember them, and I'm super conscious in them. Like I'm always like, this is a fucking dream. And then I'll like do something different or like go somewhere else. And I'm like, there, like I know I'm there. And so the past lives thing intrigues me because sometimes in my dreams I'm just like, sometimes I wonder if it's like a past life.
You're dreaming when you're dreaming
all the time. Like
that's
a perfect example is Jared. I don't know if you saw a reel with Jared's machete, but
I did. I did see that.
So we made a reel. I was like, send me your getting ready thing so I can turn it into a reel. And he did the machete thing. And it was like, then we talked about the machete on the podcast. And literally that night I went to sleep and dreamt, because I was joking with Jared on the podcast about, if anything happened, like civil unrest, I was coming to his house because he has all the weapons at his house. And so he was like, come on over. So he was like,
here's my machete.
He was like, come on over. And then that night I dreamt, and we were like, with our other friends from our school, like our group of friends, held up somewhere hiding, and Jared had his machete. And the whole time I'm sitting there like, this is not real. Like, this is a dream. Or like my dad who passed away, he'll come to my dreams and I'll be like, you're not supposed to be here. And he'll be like, just sending me weird signals and stuff. It's crazy.
Wow. Asia, that's amazing.
It's wild. No, it's so wild. And so I'm like, is this because I'm stressed? Like, I don't know why I dream like that. I don't know when it started. I feel like it's always been that way. Like, and sometimes I'll be in a dream and I'll be like, this is a weird dream. Like, I don't want to be here. And I'll just like close my eyes or something and I'll be somewhere else, or I'll wake up. It's crazy.
Oh, so you have like actual control.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm in a video game or something. I probably sound psychotic.
No, I don't think so. Because there's times in my dreams when I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely not real. This is fake. This was a dream. Like I might have done something wrong, and I'm like nervous or anxious about something. I'm like, oh, it's only a dream. I could wake up and be fine.
That's so cool that you know. So there's lots of research on lucid dreaming, which is what you're talking about, when you know that you're dreaming. Mm-hmm. And actually, Lindsay and Krista did an episode on this not too long ago.
I just listened to it.
Wild. And you can like practice, say you're an athlete, you can practice for your sport while in a dream, and you can get better at it without the physical exertion. Isn't that insane?
Hold on, is that on their episode?
That's
what Kobe probably did. Kobe Bryant
Bryant
definitely did that.
That's crazy to me. And then you actually get better. Oh, okay. Say no more. I'm on that.
Okay, So how that might tie into astrology, Asia, is that there probably are, especially with Pisces. Pisces is you're gonna you're more in touch with the spiritual world in general. And so if you're seeing your dad or you're having these lucid dreams, mm-hmm. you can use that as a tool for sure. But also you might notice that at certain times when certain astrological events are happening, you can match that up to like your dreams. And so a fun way to look at this is to dream journal and actually write down every day, especially if you're remembering them, because so many people don't remember their dreams.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. And I remember them like as soon as I wake up, I remember. But if I let any time pass, like as the day goes on, I'm like, oh, what was I doing then? Like, da da da. But usually I can remember for like a full day afterwards.
Wow. That's
I
awesome.
know. It's kind of creepy. Anyways, wow, that was a full tangent about my insane psychotic dreams. Oh, sorry, I got worked up there. Okay, so I mean, tell us about where we can find you. Like plug all the things for the listeners and how they can stay in touch with you, and if you do yoga courses or classes, like give us all the info.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, you two, for having me. It's been so fun to hang out for the last 6 weeks in our program.
I know.
I'm sad it's over, but now I have like so many podcasts to listen to from all of the people that were in the group, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Yoga Magic is my show, and what it is, it's all about self-care and self-discovery. So yoga was really the first tool that I learned to tap into, like, oh, I can shape my life and I can do things that I want to do and I can have opinions, and now it's really grown into all these other practices. And because I live in the middle of the suburbs in the Midwest, a lot of this stuff, this woo stuff, is not very accessible really to a lot of people, or they haven't heard of it. And so I like to bring self-care and self-discovery practices that are a little bit out there in a really accessible way. So I talk to all sorts of people around this idea, and we talk about yoga, we talk about self-development, we talk a lot about astrology. It's really fun. And then I teach yoga. I teach locally, but then I also teach on Zoom. Twice a week, have community classes that I do, and I do lots of workshops around things like self-care, like meditation, infusing astrology into practices, self-care practices. And then I also, like I mentioned, work one-on-one with clients to help build self-care routines that feel really good. It can be, especially right now, so hard to choose like what do I actually do? Do I need to meditate for 2 hours to like feel good? No, like actually it's just try 5 deep breaths in that moment. So we craft those together. We use the charts to kind of, again, navigate where motivation is, where preferences are, and give ourselves a little bit of grace through that whole process of building a self-care routine that can actually stick.
Yeah.
I love it. We're definitely going to plug you all over the Instagram.
Yeah. What's your IG?
You can find me at ashleysondergaard.yoga, and then the podcast is Yoga Magic Podcast, and then my website's just my name, ashleysondergaard.com.
All right, well, we're going to list all that in the show notes. Sorry, Jared, you were about to say something.
I was going to say we're going to plug it. We're going to have it in the show notes. We're going to have it on the Instagram. I feel like a lot of people are going to reach out. I'm hoping, but I do think that's going to happen because I definitely learned a lot. I think this is definitely an interesting topic, and I think our listeners are going to love it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun.
Thanks, you too. This was super fun. I'm really happy to be here.
You'll have to come back sometime, anytime you'd like. If things are the stars are aligning or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that I think we're going to get more into this astrology thing. So we have like
Jared's really into
Yeah, we're going to have deeper and better questions. So next time you come on, it'll be even better, because I feel like there's going to be some people who listen to this who are into astrology, and they're going to be like, what are they talking about? Why are they asking those stupid, dumb, basic questions? So next time we're having you on, we're going to like dive.
We're going to go deep together. Okay,
well,
good.
It's such a deep topic. Like the way people read those charts, like it is truly like, I can't even go deep into my app because I'm like, yep, this is too much. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it is really a science.
It is like a deep dive. If listeners are excited about this and they're new, but they really want to quickly deep dive, there's an amazing astrologer named Chani Nicholas who has a book called You Were Born for This. And I think she's the ultimate. Give her a follow on Instagram and check out her book. And it breaks down the technical, but it shows you it's a little bit more digestible than say some of the really, really intense technical language out there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much again. Like we said, this was so much fun. Come back anytime. We will link all of Ashley's contact information in the episode show notes, so definitely follow her. And if you like this episode and this podcast, you can subscribe, give us a rating and a review. Tell a friend. Always tell a friend.
Yeah, tell a friend to tell a friend. You already know, follow us on Instagram, Done With Adulting Pod. Also on Twitter, Done WTH Adulting. We're definitely going to have all of Ashley's information on the Insta, so make sure you guys follow her, interact with her, engage with her. Definitely a dope topic. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jared, Emily doing dishes back there today?
Yeah,
What
you
is
heard
she
that?
up to?
No, she's actually eating right now.
Oh,
She's
really?
like, yeah, she was like, "Can we cook before the pot?" I was like, "I'm not really that hungry." And then she started cooking during it, and now she's munching on a burger. And I literally saw she was eating some salad too, and the fork hit the plate, and she like, "Oh my God!" And she looked at me.
Oh, it's okay. Anyways, well, thank you guys for listening. We will be back next week. Thank you so much again, Ashley. And we are out.